This video is going to be a film study look at Joey Porter Jr., who's a player I was really interested in prior to the 2023 NFL draft. A very physical, athletic corner from Penn State. Didn't get taken off the board until round two. First pick, I think, of round two. Even though he's one of the, I think, 17 or 18 players that was invited to round one of the draft in Kansas City. So he had an interesting dynamic there. And I think he came home or was en route to traveling home to Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh area, and then was notified that he was actually drafted by the Steelers, the franchise that his dad played for and coached for. He showed a lot of potential as a rookie in 2023, despite a slow start in terms of his snap count. By week 7, which I think was a 24-17 win against the Rams, Porter was playing most of the game. Eventually, he played 100% of the snaps the last 9 weeks. I think starting in week 9 against the Titans, a game that I'll focus on acutely here. I'm going to focus on the film to try to show what I think are his strengths and weaknesses as I see it after one season. I'm not relying on any player evaluation website or metrics, just whatever I think the film shows. I think I had 6 complete games, including the Ravens game in week 5. First of all, I think he's very physical and tough. He performed well in 2023 at or near the line of scrimmage. Obviously is very comfortable in that role. I think he's perhaps less comfortable in off-man or what appears to be quarter split field coverages, and I'll give you one of the non-technical explanations for that a little bit later. It doesn't mean he can't play in those alignments, in my opinion, just based on the film that I used, the film that I saw from his rookie year. He was more effective when he was able to get his hands on wide receivers and disrupt the route before it could develop. His first impact play was week 5 against the Ravens. Really, I'm a Ravens fan in case you don't know. So really a poor decision and throw by Lamar. Porter, but nonetheless, in terms of the matchup, Porter's going to win that matchup down there on the goal line against OBJ, up at the top of the screen, by the way. I don't have spot shadowed, sorry. He's going to win that matchup 9 out of 10 times, in my opinion. And that's why I say it was a poor decision, because you're talking about a physically bigger and stronger athlete in the case of Porter, and he's able to control guys with his hands. It's also kind of a byproduct, if you ask me, of the dynamic where this play is kind of a byproduct of the dynamic where the Steelers are going to bring a lot of pressure, and they're going to minimize Lamar's ability to scramble. They're going to minimize his ability to get outside the pocket because they want to force him to throw the ball for better or for worse. It's the same concept they've used against the pistol option stuff for years, meaning force a give read on any option play so that you get the ball out of Lamar's hands, period. So you make someone else beat you. In this case, Lamar's under really, I don't think, any pressure at the time he makes this throw. There is going to be assumed pressure because of how many blitzers there are. It's a man-free situation with a +1 blitzer. And Porter just dominates the play against OBJ to get the interception. Not fun for me to watch as a Ravens fan over and over, but I'm evaluating his play independent of my fandom. Let's look at a handful of his press man plays from 2023, which is what I think he really excels at. He did a lot of this under Penn State, under Manny Diaz at Penn State, who I think is now the head coach at Duke. Plays a crazy style of defense. Organized chaos, I guess, is a better way to put it. Porter in 2023 competed against a lot of really talented wide receivers once he became a starter. Marquise Brown, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Puka Nacua, all guys that you will see snaps here against Porter in coverage from 2023. Often physical coverage at that. What I think other teams would probably call grabbing or holding or whatever. And look, I'm a Ravens fan. I root for the Ravens, period. But I was hoping to see Porter get drafted by the Ravens in 2023. He's one of the guys that I had penciled in, and when he was available there, I thought was going to happen. We got Zay Flowers. No complaints there at all for me. Fantastic talent at wide receiver. But I'm not going to change my evaluation or thoughts of a player just because of what team drafted them. That's childish stuff to me. If that offends you, whether you're a Ravens fan or Steelers fan, that's on you. Porter was a good player on film at Penn State. I loved watching him against Purdue early in 2022. They faced Aiden O'Connell and Charlie Jones and that really pass-happy Purdue offense. Now, he didn't initially start as a rookie, but his film improved. I would presume that his play and practice improved as well. The coaches started to trust him a lot. By week 9, Tomlin had announced him as a starter. I think at this point you're looking at the Steelers having 2 very good drafts in a row. And Porter, at this point, as crazy as it sounds, might be considered underrated in terms of what other teams, other fan bases know or think about him. I think that there's a really high percent chance that that changes in 2024, meaning he's going to make plays and be in such tight coverage that people are going to be forced to know who he is. Some more press man situations. He did get called for 12 penalties in 2023. They've got a physical style, or Porter has a physical style when he's playing up or near the line of scrimmage. And 12 is a high number. 4 of them came in the Tennessee game, like I said, where he started and played well against DeAndre Hopkins. But he's, first of all, he's playing at a position of risk against some incredible talent, the guys that I named earlier. 3 or 4 of those penalties were declined. 3 or 4 of them were on third down, mind you. But as you can see from this film, it shouldn't be a surprise that he gets called for penalties at times. Personally, I like his style. I always have. I mentioned that earlier. My evaluation at Penn State was a guy who was physical, a guy who was going to draw penalties, draw flags, but was also going to break down some receivers over the course of the game. The Steelers kind of, I think, ascribed to that mindset because they made him, quote, travel with receivers in each of the games that I had when they wanted to play man, I should say. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets called for 8-10 penalties in 2024. I expect that some of his technique will get cleaned up, particularly in off-man situations. But he's committed to being physical. He's not going to shy away from contact. He's not going to change his style. In fact, I think Porter enjoys landing the first shot. You can see how patient his feet are when he's in press man, meaning he doesn't overcommit initially. He's willing to react to the final move of the receiver. Think of those moves where those releases where the receivers give a juke and then go the other way, or 2 jukes and then go in the direction of their original juke, their original step. Porter doesn't get fooled by that when he's in press man because he's willing to just turn in the direction of the receiver's route, their path, and then get hands on them. I think he enjoys it. I think that's his style. I don't have a problem with DBs playing physically. The question I guess you as a Steelers fan need to answer for yourself and the Steelers coaching staff, is it worth it? The amount of penalties that he's going to get called for, is it worth it? I think it's an obvious yes, but I'm not a Steelers fan, so I don't get upset when he gets called for a pass interference or a hold on 3rd and 8, giving the other team a new set of downs. I think he's a fantastic talent at corner. In fact, I really like it when they sent him in 2023 to a certain receiver, and they were saying, let's find out if you can beat him. And they did that a lot. He's very patient, like I said, at the line of scrimmage, willing to use his hand strength and athleticism to match the release once the receiver commits to a path. He doesn't panic or overreact here. You're going to compare that in a moment to him in off-man situations. He does get beat a couple of times in press man. One of them I've shown here, it's Jamar Chase up the right sideline. And a lot of these plays are third downs. Many of them involve his teammates being targeted. I did see a graphic somewhere on Twitter in the last couple of weeks. By the way, I got a suggestion to complete this video from 2 or 3 Steelers fans. That's why I conducted it. Also because I like to study other AFC North foes. I did see a graphic where he allowed like a very low number of completed passes. Now, what that means, how you evaluate that, given that he didn't start for like the first 6 weeks, I don't know. I do know he looks like a guy who could be an extremely high-level corner very soon. 2024, I think he could be a real problem to deal with for pretty much any team. I think the Steelers took a really great corner, potentially, in the second round of a draft that if you look at the totality of it, when you're talking about Broderick Jones in round 1, Benton and Porter Jr. in round 2, Darnell Washington and Nick Herbig, it could be a great setup for that franchise with those young guys starting in 2024. Some of those guys got a lot of reps this year. I think it's a really talented group, and I said so, and I'll link up in the description a video that I put out about the Steelers draft after 2023. Let's look at some film of him against DeAndre Hopkins. There's other corners that were taken before him in the draft, clearly. You're talking about Devon Witherspoon, Emmanuel Forbes, Christian Gonzalez, and Deonte Banks were the corners taken before him. I have nothing bad to say about those guys. This video is focusing on Porter, and in actuality, I'm in the middle of doing a video on Deonte Banks. First of all, he's a Maryland guy from Edgewood High School. So I wanted to see how, and he went to University of Maryland, so I wanted to see how his season was. So I got 8 games saved up of film of Banks, probably about 120 plays. But to me, Porter looks like someone who's capable of covering as good as all of them, along the likes of Christian Gonzalez. Now, Witherspoon, of course, has the devastating potential as a tackler, a hybrid nickel outside corner, guy who gets his hands on the ball, forces fumbles. So there's a different level there with Witherspoon. He kind of stands out. I think when you look at the film of him, Porter Jr. against Hopkins in week 9, you've got a lot of snaps in man, at least one of which was won by Hopkins. I also think Porter was called for 4 penalties in this game, only 2 of which counted. I think 2 of the penalties were called on the same play, offsides, and then a hold on Hopkins over the middle. There was also a face mask. The size and physicality matchup is what works in Porter's favor against receivers like DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe the smaller, quicker, shiftier guys isn't as good of a matchup. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just offering it as a proposition. This was a competitive matchup, but if you look at the stats, which is what a lot of people tend to do, Hopkins had 2 of his 4 catches away from Porter, and overall Hopkins was 4 of 11, 4 catches on 11 targets. Joey Porter Jr. played a big role in that. Now, where the film kind of changes a little bit is off man or quarters split field coverages. I think Porter looks less comfortable in these situations, if you ask me. I'm not saying he can't play from these alignments, just that the 2023 film looked less impactful. The NFL is an extremely fast game, and all the advantages are in the favor of the receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks in terms of the pass game. Simplistically, to explain what I think I see, he often ends up mid-step in these coverage moments, off coverage, meaning his steps, his backpedal, his shuffle, whatever, ends up taking a long time to get his other foot in the ground, meaning his cleats are in the air too long, and he ends up off balanced when he has to change directions. Basically, the wide receivers are gaining ground on him. He's not able to get his hands on them because he's not in press. He's trying to decipher or read the route path and the depth. And because his feet are in the air, one of them at a time, for too long, he's taking big steps, simplistically. He's not balanced enough to react in a 360 degrees of directional in terms of possibilities. Now, some of that is related to the wide receiver split, meaning when you've got a tight split by the wide receiver, you've already got outside leverage if you're an off man. So some of that circle, that 360 degrees, might be cut down. It might be 150 degrees. It might be 180 degrees or 210. Either way, his steps are too long in this direction. You can call it bad footwork if you want. Whatever you want, it's easily correctable, number one. You can look at the corner on the other side of the field from him in some of these plays as they cycle through and compare how long it takes to get his 4th or 5th foot in the ground. This is going to sound dumb to some of you, whether you're an experienced football player, football coach, or not. For D linemen, it's about getting the 2nd foot in the ground. Let me get my 2nd foot in the ground before the offensive lineman does. It's an important thing to look at and try to win. And in actuality, sometimes you don't have to get the 2nd foot in the ground to quote win, but you're trying to. That's the speed at which you're trying to react. For DBs, it's elongated because of the space. Well, watch Porter, maybe pause it if you want, compared to the corner on the other side in these off coverage situations. He's not getting his 4th foot in the ground to be able to react in any direction quick enough for me. Whatever his responsibility is, his feet, one of them is in the air too long. It's the one opposite his plant foot. So if his right foot is touching the ground, his left foot's in the air too damn long, he's taking a big step. He appears less efficient as a result, if you ask me. He was a rookie. It's a relative weakness. I think that's it. I don't see another relative weak. I mean, maybe tackling. I didn't see an explosive tackler at times. When I say relative weakness, what I mean is it's your weaker skill compared to all the other techniques or responsibilities that you're tasked with completing or executing. Basically, when he's not balanced, the contact is more likely to dislodge him and allow a strong wide receiver to pass through without being disruptive. If you look at the route by Jamar Chase here in a moment, it's a sack, I think, by Watt, maybe a forced fumble. Chase isn't disrupted by the physical contact. Porter is, because Porter's not in a balanced position. It's this play here from week 12. Do I have any thought that Porter can't improve this and improve this quickly? No, not at all. I think he will in 2024. Kind of said that early on in this video. The NFL has played extremely fast. From his rookie film, which, like I said, I thought was a substantial amount of film, Porter in off man removes his biggest asset, which to me is this. He's got strength, he's got length, he's got patience, meaning he doesn't step too soon in press man. He allows the receiver to commit, then adjust to him, and uses his hands to control the route. Also, his athleticism. He can run. He's not slow, but his slow footwork in off man and having that depth of coverage, I think removes or minimizes, I should say, those strengths when he's in off coverage. Hopefully, I explain that in a way that makes sense. Now, having said all that, zone coverage to me illustrates that he can potentially be very good in those situations because in zone coverage, I find him to be really smart. I'm going to use it as an example to try to convince you he can improve his off-man coverage significantly. When he has a leverage side, in this case, back to the sideline in zone, this particular play against the Patriots, he can react to routes. He can play the ball a lot better. Now, it is also a long throw by the quarterback, don't get me wrong. In some of these plays, does he have safety help? Yes, it's zone defense. By definition, you as a defender know where your help is. If your understanding is of defense is that he's only good with safety help, first of all, we don't speak the same language. Because how do you explain how good he is in press coverage, in press situations, which I showed you, I think, 13 plays to try to convince you of it. I think he's got the ability to be multiple. He's not just limited to being a press man corner or beginning the play at the line of scrimmage. And I'm going to flip this a little bit. In some ways, his biggest strength, playing near the line of scrimmage, could help the Steelers disguise some of these zone coverages even more. He's on the line of scrimmage, threatening man. Not on this play, on the ensuing zone plays thereafter. He can play press man, or he can play cover two corner from that alignment, that pre-snap alignment, quite well. It's not exactly back to the sideline like this play. And the rest of these, I think the next three will illustrate it. It's not exactly back to the sideline like I showed you, but he can easily bail from a press man alignment to a cover three or quarters, or quarter, half. I think he gives the Steelers the ability to disguise the coverage to his side of the field until after the snap. It's a big asset for being 6'2", 200 pounds, as strong, athletic, and what I think is very smart player, along with the just physical tools in man. You guys should know at this point, I'm not a fan of the Steelers. I'm a Ravens fan. But I am a fan of good defensive play, period. And you have to give credit where credit is due. And when the Steelers had that draft in 2023, and even the one this past year, all of us in my Ravens Discord were very impressed with what the talent they were able to acquire, particularly the 2023 group. I think at this point, Porter is the guy who may be considered underrated to fans or evaluators from other fan bases. Not to me. After watching the film, I think he has tremendous potential. As a rookie in 2023, there was a relative weakness that I explained to you. Maybe it took too long. I didn't use a lot of football terminology, just kind of common sense. If you're being intellectually honest and you evaluate Joey Porter's film from 2023, I think you just have to say he's got a lot of potential. And you could see a guy go from being an 84 to a 94 in one season. Maybe you're a Steelers fan and you know some things I don't. And that's not the reports that have been coming out of OTAs or mandatory minicamp. I have no idea. I don't pay attention to those things. I hardly pay attention to them for the Ravens and the Lions, the two teams I create content for. I think this draft pick could end up being really astute, damn near historic. The path that he's on, to me, looks like a guy who could be a shutdown corner as soon as this year. I will say this. There's some people who often ask me when I do Steelers videos or Bengals videos or whatever, they're like, how do you do that if you're a Ravens fan? It's helped me to be impartial as I can be, by evaluating draft classes, meaning my first exposure to a player, in this case Joey Porter Jr., is watching their college film. So quite clearly, before they've been selected by an NFL team, it allows me to maintain a level of impartiality. Even though I clearly root for the Ravens every week, I am able to connect with the player based upon the film that I watched of them in college, because I didn't know what team they would end up on. Maybe I'm not doing a great job explaining this, but I'm trying to help you understand, as a Ravens fan or Steelers fan or whatever, how I'm not only able to complete videos on an opposing team's player, or in this case, a rival team's player, but actually enjoy it, particularly the Steelers. I have long looked at the Ravens, Steelers as very similar teams, organizations, who may hate each other the nights that they play each other, but for me, I root for the Steelers pretty much every game when they're not playing the Ravens. I actually enjoy doing Steelers videos. It helps me develop some knowledge. Steelers, Bengals, and Browns videos, I should say. It helps me develop knowledge and thoughts about other teams in the division. And it helps, my intention is that it helps me improve my ability to present information, plays, and patterns to you, the viewer or the listener. You have to let me know if you share any of those thoughts. Maybe you have a more tribal outlook on the Ravens, Steelers, and other teams. Understand that that's how people look at the NFL. That's just not how I do it. If you agree with my assessment about Joey Porter Jr., that I think he's a fantastic young talent at outside corner, feel free to let me know in the comment section. You may disagree. That's no problem. I think he's got real potential as someone who can follow the offense's best receiver in critical moments as a man defender. I really do think that he can and will improve his off coverage ability, whether that's actual off man or quarters, split field match coverages that are gaining so much popularity now. If you think other Steelers fans would enjoy this video, please consider grabbing a link to it, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach. Lastly, I'm going to try to do at least one offensive focus for each AFC divisional team. Obviously, I've done a ton of Ravens film study videos, Browns, Bengals, Steelers. So if you have any suggestions, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, or Browns, as far as offensive concepts or formations or plays you'd like to see me take a look at, please let me know in the comments section. Appreciate you guys' time.